On that trip, we went on a tour of a cheese farm. We've been to a cheese farm. I don't even know if that's the right term, but a farm at which they make cheese. So it included a tour of the barn where the husband was so very proud to introduce us to all of his cows. And then the wife was very proud to bring us into her cheese-making area. So we got to see how the cheese was made stage by stage, and then it was put into a cooling area where it sat for months, as it aged. And then we went into the little store where we got to taste some of the cheeses that had been aged and prepared, and they had herbs incorporated in it and different spices and things, and so you could try it all, and we came away, of course, with a few of those. So what was open to us was the sort of the story behind the story of cheese. That cheese to me is a very important food to find in the drawer of our refrigerator. I love cheese, and I don't buy it necessarily. Jane does, but I have bought it. So I know how to find it in a cooler case in Dave's Market. But beyond that, I don't know a lot about cheese, except that I really love it. And I tried different flavors, and I tried different textures, and goat cheese and whatever. But to know how it's actually made is a very different sort of thing than knowing how to buy it in a store, or how to slice it and put it on your toast. It's the result of a long process. Well, here we are in Christmas 1, and we have a lot that we do around Christmas here as a church. It's a little different than what's done culturally, or as an add-on to what's done culturally around Christmas. And a lot of what we do as Christmas, sort of the product of the season, is relatively recent. The Victorians sort of shifted Christmas into Santa Claus and Christmas trees in a way that hadn't been seen before. And then, actually, the church celebrating Christmas was sort of a late arrival. They didn't do it until probably the 4th century as an actual holiday that was in a calendar where they celebrated Christmas. And so we have a lot of customs, like building creches and lighting Advent wreaths and all that, which are beautiful, and we sing Silent Night. Were any of you here to sing Silent Night? Did anyone here sing Silent Night during the Christmas season?
Yeah.
Well, we light candles here and hold them, and we dim the lights, and it's all very evocative. It is for me anyway, and I think it is for a lot of other people. And it can be nostalgic, but it can also be very meaningful. But it can go even deeper, is what I'm saying. What it all points to is, it's a little bit like having cheese in a cheese drawer, or even going to the market and buying the cheese. You have a certain experience of it and a certain familiarity of it, but do you really know how the cheese is made? And Christmas is a time for us to sort of consider how Christmas was made. It's sort of like, what's the origin of all this? And John's Gospel, being the Gospel for Christmas 1, is sort of pointing us in that direction. That it really has to do with attuning us to something very essential about life itself and about where we come from and where we're going, and what sustains all of life. That's much more than considering the Christmas story that has, the baby Jesus. Because there's a ripening, this came out of a conversation after the 8 o'clock service about cheese. If you taste fresh cheese, it's pretty tasteless. You got to let it age, especially the Gouda cheese that we were dealing with. So, and like Jesus, if you're just dealing with the baby Jesus, as wonderful as that is, there's a lot more that gets incorporated over time in terms of even the living out of Jesus' own life on earth. As he aged, It became a richer and fuller expression. And so the man that emerged and was dealing with the disciples was somebody who had ripened. And for you and me, there is a ripening process in terms of our relationship with God and our relationship with the Christ. And Christmas points us to that process. And you and I know that for all of us and for a lot of people that we know, it can feel like we're a little bit on the surface of it all, and we're being called to something deeper. And it's a process of going more deeply into the real meaning of Christmas. And it's one thing to give gifts and to celebrate Santa Claus. And it's another thing to come together in church and to gather around the creche and to sing the carols and to light the Advent wreath and to sing Silent Night. And then it's another thing to begin to explore and to wonder about what it all is pointing to in terms of the one who made the heavens and the earth and all of life itself, and has made you and me and called us to be God's life in the world, to be of service to all of creation, to be in touch with what it means to serve rather than to abuse, to nurture rather than to consume only all of creation and all people. So this John's Gospel calls us to a deeper understanding of Christmas. It calls us to come back to the source of it all. And, like going to the cheese-making factory, cheese-making farm, it's sort of like, wow, there's a lot more to this than I knew. As much as I enjoyed the product, as much as I enjoy Christmas and all of its trappings, I like having it in the drawer to pull out at Christmas time. But there's more to the story. There's so much more to the story than we can ever really know. And yet we're called to know it, to continue to explore and to ponder and to wonder about this God who's caused all things to come into being and has given us life itself. So I think that's why John's Gospel appears on one Christmas, is that the church lectionary in its wisdom is asking us to consider the story behind the story and to wonder about what it means to leave the land of law, to leave the land of living in the drawer, so to speak, and finding our way into freedom and grace, which comes through Jesus Christ. So may this Christmas season be like the beginning of a new opening for all of us into the mystery of what it means to really be alive and to be human. And that Jesus, joining us in that exploration, might be our guide and our wisdom in living into life in a more loving, compassionate, and justice-oriented way. Amen.
Amen.